All right. Hi, and welcome or welcome back, everyone, to the Notes and Quotes podcast. Thank you so much for joining. I'm really happy to have you on here and have you join the community. It's such an honor to have you. And today is a great day because we have a very special guest. If you guys don't know, I myself am an immigrant, and I know that there's been a lot of conversations around immigrants throughout the entire world. And I figured that it would be really good to have a conversation to just kind of tap into the experiences of immigrants and what it's like being, someone living in a new country, and I guess what that whole experience is like, because a lot of people don't really know. So today I have a very impressive person. Her name is Urmi Hossain. She is a woman who wears very many hats. She's a self-published author, speaker, blogger, polyglot mentor, and holder of both the Chartered Financial Analyst and the Chartered Alternative Investment Analyst designations. She worked in the financial services industry in Canada, where she lives. Her first book, Discovering Your Identity: A Rebirth from Interracial Struggle, reflects her journey as a third culture kid. Passionate about women's empowerment, Urmi is the social media lead for Women's in Leadership Victoria chapter and the campaign manager at Femme Influence. She's a big proponent of learning and self development. One of her passions is public speaking, and she has been part of the Toastmasters Club since 2019, where she served as both the Vice President of Education and the President. So Urmi is, just like I said in the beginning, wears very many hats, such an impressive person, and I'm really, really happy to be able to talk to her today. So for those of you who don't know, or really just the listeners who don't know, could you just tell them a little bit about yourself beyond what I just read, kind of where you are right now, where you're from, and just a bit about your story, I
I
guess.
am currently based in Montreal and I work in the financial sector, like you mentioned, and I'm also a woman who wears many hats. So I do have a lot of passions, which are basically those among those that you have just mentioned, being a self published author, speaker, mentor, blogger. And in terms of where I'm from, that's a question that I always struggle to answer, to be honest, because I never really quite understand what people mean by where are you from. Is it the city, the country where I
Mm.
was born? Is it the city where I grew up? Is it the city where I went to school? Is it where my parents are from? Is it where my nationality is from? It's always very complicated for me to answer. And to simply answer that, I am born in Italy. I'm born and raised in Italy, and both of my parents are from Bangladesh,
Mhm.
and I consider myself a third culture kid. So basically, someone who grew up in a country that is different from her parents' country. Someone who spent basically childhood,
Mhm.
teenagehood in a country that is completely different than their parents. And so this is what I consider, and this is also the topic of my book that I have self published 3 years ago.
Wow. That's incredible. And I also, yeah, I think I saw a video of somebody speaking recently about that same question of where you're from and how difficult it is to answer that kind of question, especially when you are, like you said, a third culture kid, or you're, you know, you've lived in so many different places. It's really difficult to kind of answer that where you're from question. It's almost kind of a privilege to be able to just say off the top of your head, I'm from, this place, because it's not as easy for people who have a lot of different, histories and heritage
Yeah,
and
is it? Did you
culture.
watch the TED Talk about it? Because there was a TED Talk about this topic in particular.
No, I didn't see a TED Talk. I saw this, maybe it was by the same person who did the TED Talk, but it was by this girl who was just talking about her experiences on Instagram. But what
There
TED
was a
Talk was that?
TED Talk by this. Well, he was in. I don't remember if he was a professor, and he talks about the same question. It's like, how do you answer? He's actually talking the definition of home, if I'm not mistaken, and then he's talking about
Mm,
this question where people asking where are you from, and he's not sure how to answer that. He's like, do you mean the country where I've completed my study? Do you mean the country where I'm paying the taxes? Do you mean the country where I'm working? Is it like whatever passport I'm holding? Like, it was very interesting, and at the same time I could relate to it because he
yeah.
was trying to come up with an answer. He was trying to come up with a definition, and then he talks about the definition of home. And I felt it was very interesting because I could relate to it. I could totally relate to everything that he was saying.
Mm. Wow. And I've got so many questions for you based on that. But before we jump into the questions, every time we do a conversation like this, we frame the conversation through a quote, and the guest always gets to choose the quote. So do you have a quote to share with us today?
Yeah, so I do love quotes, and I have like mantras, like quotes everywhere in like at my home, and I have one on my phone as well. So I'm gonna read
Yeah.
it to you. It says, because I'm a big advocate of women's empowerment, so I have this for myself, and it says, some women fear the fire, some women simply become it.
Mm. Wow. Okay, what does that mean for you?
For me, it means to be able to embrace fear and to teach me to never have fear about anything. Like, no matter what I'm encountering, to always be bold and fearless and be able to, conquer that basically.
I love that. That's really, really good. I really like that actually. And it ties so well into our conversation today as well. So going back to what you said from the TED Talk, so what I want to know is what is your definition of home?
So, it took me a while to come up with my own answer because I feel like the definition of home is not objective. Like I feel like no matter who you ask, you typically think someone will say home is, the place where you grew up, or the place where you were born, or maybe the
Yeah.
place where you're living right now. Like we always attach it to a physical place, home, because this is where we go, right? But for me, home, it's it is Italy, but not because like I was born there, but because I have this connection, like a mental connection to it, meaning that I don't have a physical home in Italy right now. I don't have one. I have no one. Like my parents do
Yeah.
not live in Italy. Like only my friends are there, but home, for me is memories. So I have most of my memories from Italy because I grew up there. The smell of the coffee, walking to the bus station, meeting your friends at the bus station, walking to school, going to the library, going to the shopping mall with your friends.
Mm,
So for me, when I think about home, this is what's coming in my mind, like those memories from my childhood, my teenagehood, before I moved to Canada. Because yes, in Canada I have a
mhm.
physical home, but I feel like I'm not able to say it's my home. Maybe it's my second, my third home, but it's not my first home. And last year at this time, I actually went back to Italy, and I went back to see my old home. So I used to, when I was a kid, I moved around a lot within Italy. Like we changed many houses, I think at least 5, 6 times during my childhood and teenagehood. And before moving to Canada, we were
Yeah.
living in this small apartment, and of course now there are other people living. But I wanted to go back and see that apartment when I went back last year, and I had very nostalgic feelings during that moment, and I was very bittersweet because I was like, I want to go inside and see inside this home that used to be mine, but I cannot. So as I was standing in front of the gate, I
Yeah.
was just reliving those memories of me getting out, going to go to school, me coming back home. And sometimes, this is the problem about people who are always moving, immigrants people. The problem is that we just move so many times that we have many homes, but we don't have that home. Like the definition of home is in our heart. And sometimes,
Mhm.
I wish, I had a physical home back in my country where I was born, but I don't have. And so I had to build that home inside of me. So that's how I define it. Yeah.
Yeah. That's beautiful. And I relate to a lot of that. There are obviously bits and pieces that I don't, directly relate to because they're so unique to everyone's experiences, but that whole premise of you can have kind of a first and second and third home and that it's not something objective like you said, it's not always something that's strictly physical because it's home is memories, home is nostalgia, home is your feelings. And so I'm from Barbados, and even though I've only moved to the UK maybe about a year ago, I home still feels like Barbados, and I don't the house that I grew up in, and I moved around quite a bit as well, but there was one house that I spent most of my childhood in, so I still feel like that's my core home, but it's
Uh,
someone else is living there now. And I think I went back last year as well. And visited, and you do feel that kind of bittersweetness of, oh, I wish I could go inside, like I wish I could experience things the way that I used to and everything. But then also at the same time, it's I don't regret leaving at the same time because there's still home here too, but it's just it's like you said, it's very abstract. It's very much memories. It's how you define it, which can be really, really difficult. So for you, have you ever felt kind of out of place in your new environment in Canada?
I don't think I felt out of place ever, because I think Canada, being so multicultural, it gives you the chance to be whoever you want to be. And so you choose to be who you want to be. And I felt Canada gave me that chance because when I moved to Canada, I was like in my 20s. So I remember seeing like around a lot of diversity, which was very new to me, because in Italy, you don't see that. Like, you typically see white Italian people, and when you move to
Mm,
Canada, you just see, a blend of different things, a mix of different things, and I feel like you're able to blend in very easily, because you're like everyone else. Everyone comes from a different country, and so are you. And I would say that it's
mm.
in Canada that I struggled a little bit with my cultural identity, because people would ask me like where I was from, and it's that moment that it triggered a
Yeah,
little bit of like introspection in me. It's like, okay, what do they mean? How am I answering this question? um because, if I could simply say I am Italian, people would look at me and be like, okay, like, are you sure? And then I would say, okay, I'm from Bangladesh, and they would still
yeah,
question it, because they're like, okay, but what is this accent from? Until nowadays it's like that, but it was like a lot of introspection that I had to do to understand my cultural identity and how I want it to be known for. And that's why I always say to people, like, I am Italian by birth and Bengali by blood. I think it just makes it so much clearer about my own definition.
yeah, yeah. I think it is. It depends on where you go for sure. Because I think so. I've moved to the UK in a very I don't know. It's a very white dominated
Hmm.
area, but I haven't felt, directly out of place. You do feel the difference because I grew up in a place where everyone looks like me, which I guess was very different for you because you said that in Italy it was mainly like white Italians, and that might have felt a lot different than what I would have experienced. So when I came here, it was like the complete opposite. I was very aware of the fact that I was different, except for when you go to, very big multicultural areas like cities and stuff, and then it's nobody cares what you look like. So I think it is a very unique thing just trying to have an identity and you're in this new place that you are completely it's completely foreign to you. You don't know what your future is going to look like. You don't know who you are in the eyes of other people, and trying to define that to other people as well is tricky because I've had that as well where I'll go up to people and for example, my accent doesn't sound like my native accent or dialect is. It sounds almost borderline American or sometimes British. Sometimes I've got, Barbadian twang. So it's just a weird mix. And when I tell people where I'm from, I always have to over explain certain things. And it can be, yeah, it can be tricky. So I really, really relate to that as well. Hey, I'm interrupting this episode briefly to talk to you about something that's actually quite cool. We've launched a special fundraiser in partnership with the British Red Cross. Now, this podcast is all about community, and for communities to thrive, we need to support each other. The British Red Cross supports millions of people in the UK and across the world get the support they need when the crisis strikes. Their Quest for Kindness campaign is all about helping people spread the word of kindness online and raise money for the world's emergency responders. From natural disasters to conflict zones, the Red Cross is there, and now we can be too. If you want to join the kindness movement, it's extremely easy. You can use the link in the show notes to head to our fundraising page to donate or take part in our fun community polls. Polls like, what's your mood today? Do you prefer a dog or a cat? Or what superpower would you choose? Every click and contribution helps support people in crisis around the world. Let's show the world what kindness and a little bit of fun can do. Thanks for listening. How would you say that you adapted to living in a new place as an immigrant?
For me, um, so here's the thing. I always like to compare my story of immigration to how it was for my parents, because my parents are also immigrants. So they moved from Bangladesh to Italy, and I moved from Italy to Canada. And always like to make this parallel comparison just to see how it was for them and how it was for me. And I feel like what they have done really took a lot of courage because, for instance, when I think about their immigration story, they moved to a completely foreign land, literally because they knew nothing. They didn't know the language,
Mm,
they didn't know like the people, they didn't know the place, they didn't have any connection. They really literally started from scratch, and they really had to learn, the how
yeah.
it is to live there, how it is to earn, an income and so forth. And for me, it was slightly different because I feel like I already came prepared in the sense that, I knew the languages
Mhm.
of the place. I knew how to navigate, the workforce. I knew how to navigate the student life. So for me, it was like 50% of the job was already done. It was just up to me to really, upgrade my skills, to get a degree, to look for a job. So it was, I would say, in a way, it was easier to settle in because I had an idea, like I feel like I was much more prepared compared to, how it was done in the past from our parents, right? You see those images of people like taking one luggage and they just leave, like that's how it is. You're just in a completely foreign
Yeah.
land, So for me, it was slightly different. I think I was much more prepared, but of course there was like hurdles that I had to go through. Like I had to definitely finish my studies, and I was studying in, like, I did my university here in Canada, and I was studying in a language that I wasn't mine to begin with because I studied in English, whereas my whole life I studied in
Wow.
Italian. And now I work in French. And again, that's not my language. That's my fourth language.
That's incredible. That is yeah. I mean, first of all, that's extremely impressive. I mean, the level of skill that you have to do that, to just study and work and live in completely different languages than what you're used to is a massive skill. So well done for that, because I don't know if I could do that. I'm trying to think about myself going and studying in a completely different language right now. I think I'd struggle.
Thank you. What language do you speak in Barbados?
We speak English. So I only ever speak one language. I've only ever known one language. They do teach you, Spanish and French in school, but our English is our native language and our only
You don't
language.
have dialects?
We do have dialects. So but it's still English. It's
Oh,
just kind of English with different terms
okay.
and with different, ways of saying certain things. There's other Caribbean countries that have dialects, or patois, as we call it, which is like a completely different language. So Jamaica is one of those countries where you can either speak in English or you can speak in patois. And with patois, if you don't know it, it's gonna be like listening to a foreign language, even though it is just English, but it's English with a twist is the easiest way of explaining it. But it is, yeah, Barbados is not like that. Barbados is very much English, and sometimes you have to. I feel like I realized, because I'm different, because I've grown up there, so I know how to understand everything very clearly. But I know that sometimes people who visit, or tourists or something, they do have a hard time understanding, just because Barbadians speak really quickly sometimes, and we speak with thick dialect at times. So it can be hard to understand things, and you might have to say things slower. But overall, it is still
Gotcha.
English.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
got it. Okay, okay.
Sometimes it can be weird to go to a different country and then try to adapt to a completely new language. Yeah, it's a completely foreign experience for me.
It is. It is because when I was in Italy, of course, I learned how to speak English, French, and I we were taking like bunch of like language classes back in Italy. And what I
Hmm.
didn't know about, French was that there are different kinds of French. A little bit like English. You have different accents and different pronunciation depending on where you're from. Because you have French in Morocco, you have French in Belgium, then you have the French from France, then you have the French from Montreal, which is the Quebecois. That was probably one of the biggest hurdle for me because I was not aware that there was another type of French where people speak with a different accent. So for me, when I
Yeah.
came to Montreal and I hear people speaking in French, I remember that was like, oh crap, like why am I not? able to understand them. Because I used to go around and be like, yeah, 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 don't worry, I can speak French and stuff like that. But then it was not true. I was like, literally, I was having such a hard time understanding them. And then I was like, okay, I need to work on it. I have to like practice my listening and my speaking. And now I'm much more comfortable.
Yeah.
But it, like at the beginning, that was like a hurdle for me. And then of course, even with English, like it was never a hurdle, but even in Canada, they have their Canadian accent when they speak English. English. Then when you go to the United States, you have the American accent. And then of course you have the British one. Then you have the Australian one. Then you have the South African one. Like it's just so
Yeah.
fascinating that there are so many accents, even though it's the same language.
Yeah. No, it is. I get fascinated by it all the time. I listening to different English like sayings and stuff in different accents and the way that people interpret things, I find is so interesting because even here in the UK, there's different ways of people saying things. I think the UK is one of those countries where you have so many different accents in one
Yes.
country because there's like, Irish accents, there's accents from the Midlands, there's accents from London. And when I first came, I could only tell the difference between standard British accent and maybe like Scottish and Irish because those are very two different things. But when you're in Britain for a long time, the Brits hear the difference between every single accent, and somebody from London and somebody from the South, I'm not going to hear the difference. But now I do over time. And then you just kind of become immersed in those little cultural terms and stuff. So, yeah, yeah.
Yes.
One of the things I would say is like sometimes I've felt like I've had to, in certain circumstances, I wouldn't say everywhere, but sometimes I feel like I have to downplay certain parts of who I am, just cultural wise, and especially as being a woman as well, and as being a woman of color too, in a predominantly white area. I know that Canada's about and where you are is probably a bit more diverse, but have you ever felt like you had to kind of downplay parts of yourself in order to be accepted or to fit in at all?
No,
Mm,
I never, and I didn't want to do that either. Like, I believe in this whole concept about living authentically and showing up authentically to the world, and it's something that I really truly value. So for me, like, I never wanted to, let's say, perform a role or play a role, and it was always important for me to show up
yeah.
to the world for the person that I am. So it never occurred to me to basically, do certain things just to, be accepted. It never occurred to me, not even in Italy, because people in Italy, they saw me for the person that I was, and even in Canada. But I also agree with you that I think people, especially our society, they come with biases, and I think it's normal. It's they're just ingrained in us, and so it
Yeah.
comes automatically. The people are really biased towards certain, you know, I would say gender, to a certain ethnicity. It's very, very normal. But it never occurred to me, and I was never going to do that, no matter what. Like, I'm not that kind of person who likes to be part, like, who likes to, I would say, mold, like, I never wanted to be that kind of person. Like, I would rather be alone than be part of a group where everyone is trying to be similar to each other.
I love that. That shows so much strength as well. That's a really powerful mindset that I think so many more people would benefit from. I feel like I need to practice that more often as well because in theory I think I believe that too, but then it's sometimes in practice I'm kind of like if I'm in a situation where I'm super anxious or I'm super nervous or I feel out of place, then sometimes I tend to minimize myself, which I know is a terrible practice. So I think reminding myself of those exact things that you said is so important. It's so incredibly important. How do you how do you do that on it? Does it just come naturally to you or have you had to like tell yourself certain things to help?
No, it wasn't natural to me. I think it was something that I I wouldn't say I really like worked towards for, but I think it was something that, when you're young, you don't think too much about it. But then as you get older, you start to question things. You question things, and that's
Mhm.
how I think it just automatically builds up. And I think a lot of the time it also comes with experience, with knowledge, and also with the confidence that you know gain throughout your life. So I think as I was getting much more confident about
Yeah.
my identity and my values, I would say that's how I was able to stand up for myself and showing up like for my authentic self. Like even like for me, for instance, even showing up authentic at my workplace is very very important. I always want to show myself for my personality, for the person that I am, for my individuality. I think that's one thing that I really had to work on, especially
Yeah.
because I don't want to be part of the group who does the same thing. I really like to stand out, like
Yeah.
no matter what, even if I'm in the wrong, I like to stand out, because I think there is honesty in
Yeah.
that. There is honesty, like you're honest to yourself, and for me that's very very important.
Mm, yeah, I absolutely agree. I absolutely agree with that, and I really hope that people listening kind of take that to heart as well. Because if you think about it in that way, if you really do mold yourself to just kind of be the same as everyone else, you're never gonna really gain anything because you're just gonna be the same as everyone else. You'll never stand out, and what's the fun in that? You know, I think it's really powerful and strong, like I said, to be very authentic within yourself.
Yes.
So for people who might feel a bit more, I guess, cautious to having that mindset, or I guess especially immigrants as well, because I've spoken to other immigrants too who feel who might not have that level of strength. What would you kind of say to them, especially if they're in a new country and it's all a new culture for them and they're trying to figure out their
Yeah.
place? What would you kind of tell those people?
So some of the things that occur to me is that I mentor people, and a lot of the people that I mentor are female. So basically, women who are trying to find their place in a new place. So usually they are immigrants, so women that moved from a different country. So for me, one thing that I would suggest to people,
Mm,
especially to people moving from one place to another, is to find a mentor. Reason being is, if you have a mentor, someone that you can rely on, this person can share with you real
yeah,
life experiences about the things that they went through. And I always say, don't find a mentor that is like someone who's born in that place, but I would say find another mentor who went through your same, path. Like it's an immigrant, basically. Like find
mm,
someone who moved also from another country, who settled down in the country where you're living, and have them as a
yeah,
mentor. Because recently I've been mentoring a girl who is from Cameroon, and she's like, I moved from Cameroon, I'm trying to settle down here, I'm trying to look for a job. And I understand what she's going through, the challenges of like looking for a job, making friends, working on the English. And I feel like I am able
yeah,
to serve her because I went through the same thing. So I always feel like, find a mentor who has your same kind of profile. And I think that way you're able to share your actual experiences, you're able to guide the person. And I think that that would be like a great way, to basically understand how to navigate some challenges. First thing first is to find a mentor, and then probably the second thing is to a little bit analyze your weaknesses and the things that you want to work on. And typically, you can do some exercises where you make a list of your strengths and weaknesses and see if you can work on some of your weaknesses. So for instance, you move in a different country and you want to work on your English. So you're like, okay, how do I improve my English? So then you can start looking out for like groups where they do conversation. Maybe you can see if there are like website where you can take some English lessons. You can see if there are like ways to do some language exchanges. So you have to really also think about your weaknesses or things that you want to work on, things that you want to improve, and take some action from there. Of course, you have to like you know do it little by little, because if you are like, okay, I want to be perfect in English by tomorrow, I think it's not going to work out. You know that it's a long process, and it's about building
yeah.
habits. You have to build habits, and you have to see like how it's feasible, but it's doing something every day, a little bit every day, basically.
Yeah, those are honestly brilliant tips. I feel like I'm going to take some of those to heart myself because it's also when you come to a new place, you do have that rush mentality of I want to become immersed and I want everything to feel easy right now or at least like by tomorrow or something. And it can be really frustrating when that doesn't actually happen and when you still face struggles even months onward when you first moved there. And I think it's important to be gentle with ourselves and to take take our time and understand that it is going to be a learning period, especially if you're learning a new language, especially if you're learning a new culture and it's a completely new environment for you. It can take some time to just grow into the space. And that whole mentor thing, that's something that I never even thought of doing. Because when I moved here, I had the privilege as well because I think your parents did an incredible thing. It was nowhere near like the level of, I think, struggle and strength that your parents went through that mine did, but mine in a similar way were there before I came. So I kind of had like a smoother transition into moving here. But when I did move here, it never occurred to me to try and like reach out to somebody who might even possibly be my age or somebody who has gone through that experience of moving to a completely new country and they know those struggles and they can guide me through it. I kind of just was just thinking, well, this is just it. I need to catch up and I need to do it all on my own. I never thought about doing that, so I think that that's an incredible tip as
Yeah.
well. And in your book, when you were talking about discovering your identity and rebirthing from international struggle, what is one thing that you kind of wish that you knew before that rebirth?
I think one thing that I wish someone told me is that you don't need a permission to be who you want to be. Because I think that whole book is really about me making a contrast and a comparison between the Italian culture and the Bengali culture, but I felt like I always had to choose either one or the other. That was the biggest problem for me, like
Mm,
when I was with my Italian friends, like I always felt like I just wanted to be Italian. And then when I was with my like the Bengali community, I always felt like I had to be Bengali. Like I could never be a mix of two. That's how I felt. And this is where the struggle came because
yeah,
I felt like I was always in between, living in between, trying to be a little bit of both. And I always thought that I always had to choose one. I like that was my that was the
yeah.
thing to do. You just have to choose one culture, one identity, one ethnicity. That's how you have to identify yourself. But I feel like when you do some introspective work and then you realize that, you incorporating already a little bit of the two cultures in you, you don't have to choose either one. You get to choose who you want to be and you don't need to ask for permissions. It's what you're comfortable with in your own skin. So that's why I always say to people like, I am Italian Bengali. Sometimes I have people telling me, oh, no, you're just Italian, or some other telling me you're Bengali, but I'm like, I get to choose that. You don't have to tell me what I
Yeah.
am. And I also didn't want to like to choose either one or the other because, like I felt like if I was just saying, oh, I'm Italian, I was first of all lying to myself, but at the same time, I felt like I was omitting 50% of my story because my parents moving to Italy from Bangladesh, me being born in Italy, growing up in a very Bengali household. Like if I was not saying that, I was omitting 50% of my identity and my story. And the same thing was also if like I was just saying I'm Bengali, but if I was saying I'm Bengali, again, I was omitting 50% of my story, like I can speak Italian, I love eating, pasta. I grew up in Italy, I studied in Italy and things like that. Like for me, it was something that I wanted people to know. And that's why I always say I am Italian Bengali because that's who I am. That's really who I am.
That is, oh, that is, I relate to that so much. I relate so much to that because even now, I say it like I've been here for ages, but I've only been here a year. But sometimes I'll go to places where, especially if I'm like at a work event or something and somebody asks me where I'm from, I don't have the kind of time to just tell them all of these different things. So I just tell them, okay, I'm from this town in the UK. But then it feels like you said, like a lie
Yeah.
to myself. Like I'm omitting so much of myself, and it feels really diminishing. So I think that acknowledging that you don't have to be one thing, because I have that all the time as well when I'm here in the UK with trying to make new connections here as well. I almost feel like I have to fit into the culture and then kind of just not I have to choose to be very UK, but then when I'm, interacting with my Barbadian friends or family members and stuff, I have to still retain the fact that I'm 100% Barbados and that none of the UK culture has gotten into me or anything. But overall, I know that, especially because I've moved here relatively young, because I'm still in my early 20s, that I am going to change and evolve and
Okay.
stuff, and then I might become 2 different identities or multiple different identities, and that has to be okay, and I don't have to choose or feel bad about that.
Yeah, and I think you will find your answer at the end of it. Like you are still young, and me too. When I was in my 20s, I it wasn't something that came across my mind. And now that I'm living in Canada, there is a third identity. Like I am Canadian by nationality, but it's something that I don't like to define myself. Like I never go around and tell people I'm also Canadian. It is in my paper, but do I actually feel Canadian?
Yeah.
I don't. I'm honest about it. I don't, and I'm not
Mhm.
able to find that connection, even though it's been great living in Canada and people are welcoming and so forth. But it's not part of identity. It's not the third identity that people ask me, is it part of your identity? I'm like, it's not. And maybe it will be in a couple
Yeah.
of years, who knows.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think it's absolutely okay to be honest about that. I don't think that anyone should really feel shame about any of that. If you have been living in a country for, I don't know, 10 years or so, you don't have to identify yourself as like you are that country. It doesn't have to be that. If you feel like you're something else, and that's absolutely
Yes,
okay.
I agree. I agree.
Yeah. Oh, I cannot wait for this conversation to come out. I feel like it's going to be so beneficial for so many people. And I'm really grateful that I've gotten to speak to you today. So I am going to hand the floor over to you to see if you have any last words for our listeners before we sign off.
Think my message would be really give yourself permission to be who you want to be. I think that would be my message from a cultural point of view. I think we are often very much labeled by people, and you don't need those labels. Like you just have to
Yeah.
be comfortable with whoever you choose to be, and so that would be really my message.
That's wonderful. I'm gonna hold on to that for myself as well. Thank you so much, Urmi. Honestly, it's been a really, really good conversation, and I'm so grateful to have had you on the podcast. Where can people find you? I do want people to go read your book because I think that's going to be a very beneficial read for people. If this conversation was interesting to you, I definitely think that book would be interesting to you as well. Where can people go find you?
Yeah, so I have a LinkedIn account. It's called Urmi Hossain. I also have a YouTube channel called Urmi Hossain. My book is available on Amazon. It's called Discovering Your Identity, a Rebirth from Interracial Struggle. And if people want to find out more about the work that I do with women in leadership and women's empowerment, the website is Women in Leadership Canada. I think if they just put that, it would just show up. And I am the social media lead for the Women in Leadership Victoria chapter. So if they just Google Women in Leadership Victoria chapter, they will find all the work that I do in relation to women in leadership.
Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Go search her up. I'm sure that you're going to definitely find some sort of benefit from doing that. I absolutely agree with it. Yeah, and I will attach everything in the show notes for you guys as well. So there's no excuse. Even if you don't feel like searching things up, you can just go down to the show notes and click on it, and it's right there. So once again, thank you so much, Urmi, for joining. And I'm really, really happy to have had this conversation with you. And thank you guys also for listening. And if you want more of the Notes and Quotes podcast, you can go find us on our socials. We are on Instagram, LinkedIn, TikTok, and YouTube. Videos exclusively on YouTube. That's where you'd be seeing both myself and Ermi having this conversation. Not really in person, but we can see each other, and then you'll be able to see us if you're on YouTube. And that's it. I will see you guys again next Tuesday. And yeah, have a great day, night, whatever time it is where you are. And that's it. Bye, guys.